I never thought I'd bury a body in the backyard of the house we built together. But that's what love does when it turns to ash. It makes you dig deeper than you ever imagined. The night Mark handed me those papers, his voice dripping with that fake southern drawl he picked up from too many bourbon nights, I saw the devil in his eyes. The same one I'd covered for 20 years ago. And as the rain hammered the roof like God's own judgment, I whispered back, "Not without taking you down first. It started with the in-laws." Of course. Mark's folks. Earl and Betty from that dusty trailer park in rural Georgia, they'd clawed their way out of back in the 80s. They'd always been leeches, showing up every Christmas with sob stories and empty suitcases. But this time it was different. Mark called me from his office downtown, some high-rise glass tower in Atlanta where he played the big-shot real estate developer, and said they were coming to stay. Just for a bit.
Babe.
Dad's got emphysema acting up, and Mom's knees are shot.
We got that guest house out back, right?
It's perfect. I was elbow-deep in paint cans, prepping our flip house in the suburbs for sale, the one that was supposed to be our ticket to early retirement. Selena Hargrove, 45 and still hustling like a 20-something, because that's what marriage to a man like Mark demanded. I dropped out of community college to support his dream back when we were kids in high school, waitressing doubles at Waffle House while he partied his way through a business degree he barely passed. But I loved him then, fierce and stupid, the way only a girl from a broken home can. So I said yes, like always. Fine, but keep it short. We ain't running a nursing home. They rolled in 2 days later. A beat-up Ford F-150 towing a U-Haul that looked like it had seen the apocalypse. Earl, with his oxygen tank wheezing like a punctured lung, and Betty, chain-smoking Virginia Slims, even though the doc said it'd kill her faster than the cancer scare last year. They hugged me like I was family, which I guess I was after 22 years. But their eyes darted around our McMansion like they were casing the joint. Mark slapped Earl on the back, all grins and backslaps. And by dinner, they were settled in the guest house like they'd owned it forever. That's when the bills started. Not the usual ones, groceries spiking because Betty insisted on her Cracker Barrel fix every morning, or Earl's meds draining our copay like a Vegas slot machine.
No.
These were weirder. A $1,800 charge on our joint Amex for home improvements. I pulled a statement from our online portal while Mark was in the shower, steam fogging up the marble bathroom we'd installed last year. Plumbing upgrades? Electrical? Our place was fine, hell. We'd just had inspections for the flip. I confronted him that night over takeout Thai. The kind with extra spice because I needed something to burn away the suspicion. "Babe, it's nothing," he said, waving it off with that easy charm that used to melt me. "Just fixed up the guest house a bit. Dad's tank needs a better outlet. And Mom wanted central AC. You know how she gets with the heat." His eyes were blue as Carolina skies. But there was a flicker there, like a storm cloud rolling in. I let it slide, because that's what you do when you've got a mortgage and a kid in college and a husband who's suddenly networking late every Tuesday. Our son, Jake, was the glue holding the illusion together. 21. Majoring in finance at Georgia Tech, the spitting image of Mark with my stubborn streak. He'd call on weekends, voice crackling over FaceTime from his dorm, complaining about dorm food and girls who ghosted him. "Mom, you okay?"
Dad sounds off.
I always laughed it off. "Just your grandpa's snoring keeping us up." How's that internship? But deep down, I knew. Mark had been distant for months, texts from clients at odd hours, cologne that wasn't his on his collars. And now, with Earl and Betty crashing our life like a bad sequel, The cracks were spiderwebbing. A week in, Betty cornered me in the kitchen while I was brewing coffee, her hands trembling around a mug of Folgers. "Selena, honey, we appreciate this so much. Mark's been a saint. You know, charging us that fair rent, $1,800 a month. Says it's to help with the house payments." My stomach dropped like I'd chugged battery acid. Rent? To his own parents? In our guest house? I forced a smile, teeth grinding. "Oh yeah? He mentioned that to you?" She nodded, oblivious, lighting another smoke. "Said it's temporary, till Dad's on his feet. And get this, he told us Jake's gonna take over the payment soon. My son will handle it, he said." Like it's all set. I excused myself, heart pounding like a bass drum at a Lynyrd Skynyrd show, and marched to Mark's office. He was on the phone, laughing that big, booming laugh that closed deals. When he hung up, I slapped the Amex statement on his desk. "Explain." He leaned back in his leather chair, fingers steepled like some TV lawyer. "Selena,
Calm down.
it's business. They're staying longer than we thought. Dad's on a wait list for assisted living up in Chattanooga. The $1,800 covers their share. Fair's fair. Business. Our home, our family, reduced to a goddamn ledger entry. And Jake, our boy, already buried in student loans, now on the hook because his daddy decided to play landlord with his own blood?" I stormed out, tires squealing on the driveway as I peeled off to the nearest dive bar, a neon-lit hole called the Rusty Nail, where the jukebox played too loud and the whiskey was cheap. 3 shots in, my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Ask your husband about the cabin in Blue Ridge." And the girl from accounting. Attached was a photo, Mark, arm around a bleach blonde half his age, her hand on his thigh, time-stamped last weekend, while I'd been playing hostess to his folks. Betrayal hit like a freight train, but it wasn't the first time. 20 years ago, back when we were scraping by in a 1-bedroom in Decatur, Mark had cooked the books at his first real job, a small construction firm. Embezzled just enough to buy us this life, the house, the cars, the illusion of the American dream. When the auditors came sniffing, he panicked, pinned it on me, the office manager who'd signed off on everything because I trusted him. I took the plea deal, probation, community service, a felony record that killed any chance of me climbing out of waitressing. He promised he'd make it right, swore on Jake's life. And I believed him, because love's a blindfold tighter than any judge's gavel.
Now,
Staring at that photo, the blindfold ripped off. I drove home in the pouring rain, thunder cracking like the world splitting open. Mark was in the living room, feet up, watching ESPN. Earl and Betty's light flickered in the guest house window. "We need to talk," I said, voice steady as a loaded .38. He didn't even look up. "Not now,
babe."
Game's on." I threw the phone at his feet, the photo glaring up like an accusation. His face went slack, then hard. "Who sent that? Some jealous intern? Doesn't matter. It's over."
"Mark,
"Pack your shit." He laughed, that ugly bark that meant he was cornered. "Over? In my house? With my parents here? You think you can just waltz out?" He stood, towering over me, the man I'd built everything for. "Jake's my son. This is his inheritance. And you're done. My son will handle it. You can leave." Those words, "my son will handle it," echoed like a death sentence. Not our son.
His.
Like I'd been erased. Just another line item charged and discarded. I grabbed my keys, rain soaking me as I backed out, but not before seeing the smirk on his face. He'd won again. Or so he thought. The next morning, I woke up in a motel off I-85, the kind with thin walls and a vending machine that ate quarters. My head throbbed from the whiskey and the what-ifs, but clarity burned brighter than the regret. Mark Hargrove wasn't just a cheater, he was an architect of ruins, building empires on the backs of everyone who loved him. And I'd been his favorite foundation, solid, uncomplaining, cracked but still standing. No more. I called in sick to the flip house gig, told my crew I'd twisted an ankle, which wasn't far off from the truth. My whole world's lopsided now. Then I drove to Jake's dorm, 2 hours north through peach orchards turning gold in the fall sun. He was in the quad, tossing a frisbee with his roommates, all lanky kids with futures brighter than mine ever was. When he saw my car, that old Honda Civic I'd bought used after the plea deal tanked my credit, his face lit up. Mom, what are you doing here? We grabbed coffee at a campus cafe, the kind with overpriced lattes and baristas who didn't know a felony from a flat white. I told him everything or most of it. The affair, the photo, the rent scam on his grandparents. But not the embezzlement. Not yet. That was our family skeleton, rattling in the closet Mark had nailed shut. Jake's jaw clenched, fists balling around his foam cup. That son of a bitch. Charging Grandpa? And me? What the hell? Mom?
His eyes.
Mark's eyes flashed with that same storm. I'm coming home. We'll sort this. No, I said, sharper than I meant. Stay here. Finish your semester. This is grown folk mess. But inside, I was screaming for backup. Jake was the one pure thing we'd made, untainted by Mark's greed. If I dragged him in, it'd stain him too. He hugged me tight, promising to call his dad, to set him straight. I nodded, but as I drove south, doubt gnawed like termites. Mark had a way of flipping scripts, turning victims into villains with a smile and a check. By evening, Jake texted, Dad says you're hysterical. Overreacting to a work flirt. Says the rent's a joke. And you're stressing everyone out. He wants space. Love you,
Mom.
Let's talk soon. Hysterical. The words stung like salt in a fresh wound. I checked into another motel, this one in Macon, and pulled out my laptop, the beat-up Dell from my community college days. Time to dig. Mark always said I was too nosy, but nosy was what kept me alive after the plea. I started with public records, then his emails, password unchanged since '05, Jake Rules 1. Buried in a folder labeled Blue Ridge Getaway were deeds, yes. Plural. The cabin from the text? Ours. Bought cash last year. But transfers too. Chunks of our joint savings siphoned to an offshore account in the Caymans. And emails to the blonde, Lacey, from accounting at his firm. Can't wait to make this official. Once Selena's out, it's you and me,
Babe.
Jake's on board. Jake? My blood ran cold. I forwarded it all to a burner email, then called a lawyer, a shark named Rita from the women's shelter I'd volunteered at during community service. Divorce him yesterday, she growled over the line, voice like gravel. But honey, with that felony on your record, he'll bury you in court. Prenup's ironclad, He gets the houses. You get the dog if you're lucky. I hung up, staring at the rain-lashed window.
No.
Court was Mark's playground. I needed something dirtier. That's when the idea hit. Black and beautiful as midnight oil. Revenge wasn't about winning. It was about making him feel the weight of every lie. Step 1: the in-laws. I drove back at dawn, parking a block away like a thief in my own life. The guest house light was on. Earl's cough echoed through the mist. Betty answered my knock. Robe askew. Confusion wrinkling her face. Selena? Mark said you left town. Girl troubles or something? I pushed past, straight to the kitchen table where Earl sat. Tank hissing. Your son charged you $1,800 to stay here. In his own guest house. And he plans to stick Jake with a bill when you're gone. Betty gasped, hand her chest like a soap opera widow. Earl's eyes narrowed. Oxygen forgotten. That boy. After all we did, lent him the down payment on this place back in '98. I nodded, pulling out printouts, bank statements, emails. Lies stacked like cordwood. They read in silence, faces paling. We didn't raise him to be this, Betty whispered. But blood's blood. Not anymore, I said. Help me, and I'll get you out. Real assisted living.
Paid for.
No strings. Earl wheezed a laugh. And water you a skin in return. Girl? I leaned in, voice low. Turn the tables. Record him. Every late-night call to Lacey. Every brag about the easy Mark he married. They agreed, eyes gleaming with that same Hargrove hunger. Betrayal runs deep in some families. Over the next week, I played ghost, crashing on Rita's couch, job hunting under the table as a handywoman. Because who hires felons for office work? The tapes came in drips, Mark ranting to Lacey about dumping the old ball and chain, laughing as he transferred another $5,000 offshore. Jake gets it, says mom's been holding me back. Kid's smart, he'll run the firm someday. My heart shattered, but I glued the pieces with rage. Jake wasn't on board. Mark was poisoning him, flipping our boy against me with half-truths and handouts. The climax brewed on a Friday night, full moon hanging low over the pines like a guilty witness. I met Mark at the cabin, texted from Betty's phone, pretending she needed family talk. He showed alone. Portia purring up the gravel drive, Lacey's perfume lingering like a taunt. I waited inside, fire crackling in the stone hearth. A bottle of his favorite Pappy Van Winkle decanted. Selena? He stepped in, tie loose, confusion melting to smugness. Betty said crisis. What's this? I handed him a glass.
Clinking mine.
To new beginnings. Yours without me. He sipped, wary now. As I laid it out, the recordings, the deeds, the Cayman logs. His face cycled through denial, rage, that scheming pivot. You think this scares me? I built this. You'll rot in jail again before I let you. Again? I cut in, voice a whip. You mean the felony you hung on me? The one that killed my dreams so you could play king? I hit play on the laptop, his own voice, confessing to Lacey. Selena took the fall like a champ. Best decision I ever made. He lunged, but I was ready, pepper spray from Rita, the kind that blinds like Judgment Day. He staggered, cursing, as I circled him. Here's the deal.
Mark.
Sign over the houses, the accounts. Walk away clean, or these go to the DA. Your parents. Jake. He wiped his eyes, coughing. Jake hates you now. Thinks you're crazy. I told him everything. The lie twisted like a knife. But I held. Then let him decide. I texted the files to Jake's phone.
Live.
Seconds ticked like a bomb. Mark's phone buzzed first. Betty. Forwarding the lot. Then Jake, Mom? WTF is this? The room spun. Tension thick as smoke. Mark smirked through tears.
See?
He's mine. But Jake's next text. Dad. You're done. I'm coming home. And just like that, the empire cracked. We buried it all that night, not a body, but the corpse of our marriage, in a shallow grave of legal pads and ash from the fireplace. Mark signed, hands shaking, eyes darting like a cornered fox. The houses to me, in trust for Jake. The offshore money repatriated, half to Earl and Betty's care fund, half to wipe Jake's loans. Lacey ghosted him by morning, probably after seeing the news alerts I anonymously tipped to his firm's HR. But revenge isn't a clean kill, it's a slow bleed. Jake arrived at dawn, face a mask of fury and grief, hugging me first fierce, apologetic before turning on Mark. How could you? Dad? Mom covered for you. And this is how you repay. Mark tried the flip, tears flowing, painting me the villain who'd driven him to it. Jake wavered, that Hargrove blood pulling, but the evidence was ironclad. You're out, he said finally. Don't call. Earl and Betty packed quiet. No goodbyes. Just a check for $50,000, the original down payment, with interest. For the boy, Earl rasped. They drove north, toward Chattanooga, leaving the guest house empty and echoing. I thought that was the end, triumph, bitter as black coffee. We sold the McMansion, split the proceeds 3 ways. Jake deferred a semester, moved back to help with the flip houses, his finance smarts turning my handywoman hustle into Hargrove Renovations LLC. No felonies on record anymore. Rita pulled strings for expungement. Pro bono for one of her girls. Life normalized. Barbecues on the deck. Jake's girlfriend meeting the family, just us now. Sunsets over the Chattahoochee that felt earned. But twists don't die easy. 3 months later, a letter arrived, no return address.
Postmarked Atlanta. Inside.
A single photo, me, 20 years younger, signing those plea papers in the courthouse. Mark's hand on my shoulder. And a note. In his scrawl, you think you won? Jake's DNA test says otherwise. He's not mine. Never was. From that summer you worked late at the diner. I knew. Raised him anyway. Now he knows. Handle it, Selena. Or I will. The room tilted. Jake, my boy. Our anchor, not Mark's? That summer. Yes. There'd been a fling with Tommy, the cook. A one-night blur after Mark's all-night bender. But I'd confessed, tearful. And Mark. Forgave?
No. Schemed.
Raised Jake as his own. Not out of love, but leverage. A secret buried deeper than any embezzlement. Weaponized now to shatter us anew. I burned the letter, but the poison spread. Jake confronted me that night, eyes red from his own anonymous mail.
Mom.
Is it true? His voice broke, dividing lines we'd redrawn. I told him everything, the affair, the forgiveness that wasn't, Mark's long game. You're mine, I whispered. Blood or not? Always. He nodded. But doubt lingered. A crack in the foundation. Mark vanished after that. Rumors of a job in Texas. Lacey in tow. But no calls. No custody grabs. Just silence. Heavier than screams. Did I win? Hell if I know.
Jake stayed.
But therapy sessions stretched into years. Trust a fragile rebuild. I run the business now. Selena Hargrove.
CEO.
No man's shadow. But late nights. Whiskey in hand. I wonder, was revenge justice? Or just trading one grave for another? Mark's gone. But the devil's echo lingers, flipping sides one last time, leaving us to debate who the real monster was.
Me.
For digging? Him. For planting the seeds? Or Jake? Caught in the crossfire of sins we both sowed? In America, happy endings come with asterisks. Ours does too, love. Fractured but fighting. In a world that charges $1,800 for family and calls it fair. You decide if it's redemption or ruin.